When the woman at my front door said my son's name, my whole body went cold. Her voice was soft, cracked around the edges like she'd been holding back years of pain. "I'm looking for Ethan," she said. "I'm his mother." For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. The smell of the evening rain, mixed with the faint scent of jasmine from our front porch plants, and I just stood there frozen, holding a dish towel in one hand, my mind spinning. Her eyes were tired but piercing, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and were running out of time. I had spent the last 11 years raising Ethan, tucking him in, packing his lunches, standing at the edge of football fields and parent-teacher nights. He called me Mom, and now this stranger stood in front of me claiming to be his real mother. I should have called for my husband, but something in her tone stopped me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't threat. It was desperation. That night began the unraveling of everything I thought I knew about family, love, and what it means to truly be a mother. Back then, before all of this, life had been simple. Or at least, it looked simple from the outside. My name is Claire. I was 31 when I met Daniel Widower, quiet smile, and a little boy with sandy hair who hid behind his father's legs the first time I came to their house. Daniel had lost his wife when Ethan was just 4. He told me he wasn't looking for love. He was just trying to be a good father. But somehow, love slipped in between the cracks of grief and routine. We married 2 years later. Ethan was 6, then sweet, shy, and a little cautious around me. He'd watch how I folded laundry, how I cooked dinner, like he was testing the space I'd take up in their lives. I never forced the word mom. It came one night on its own, when he'd had a nightmare and ran into our room crying. I held him till his sobs quieted, and in a sleepy whisper he said, "Thanks, Mom." That single word reshaped my heart. I built my life around that boy. We did everything together, baked cookies, built Lego castles, fought over bedtimes. Daniel used to laugh and say, "You two are the same stubborn and sweet in turns." For years, it was us 3 against the world. We lived in a cozy house at the edge of a quiet town, white fences, backyard swing, Sunday barbecues. Daniel worked in construction. I ran a small home bakery. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Ethan grew into a bright teenager, awkward but kind. He had his father's eyes and my temper. I couldn't have been prouder. I thought our family was solid-rooted. Until that knock on the door. The woman's name was Melissa. She said it calmly, almost like she was afraid to take up too much space. "I'm sorry to just show up," she said, clutching her purse. I didn't know who else to turn to. I remember staring at her hands. They were trembling, thin, bones visible beneath pale skin. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She swallowed hard. "I need to see Ethan, just once." Her words hit me like a small explosion. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me before Ethan could overhear. "I think you've got the wrong house," I said automatically, though we both knew that wasn't true. Melissa's eyes softened, almost pitying. "I don't. You're Claire, right? You married Daniel 7 years ago." The air between us turned heavy. "I know about the adoption papers," she said quietly. "I signed them, but things have changed." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I hadn't thought about those papers in years, how Daniel had finalized the adoption when Ethan was 5, how I'd become his legal mother. Melissa had disappeared long before that. Daniel told me she'd left when Ethan was a baby, walked out. Said she wasn't ready to be a mother. He said she never looked back. But the woman standing on my porch now looked like someone who'd carried regret for a long, long time. "I'm not here to take him away," she said quickly, reading my face. "At least, not yet." That yet sliced through me. She hesitated, then added, "I'm sick. Stage 4. They gave me months. I just want to see my son before I go." Her words hung in the air like cold smoke. I wanted to feel compassion. I wanted to believe her. But something in the way she said it soft, rehearsed, made my stomach twist. "I'll talk to Daniel," I said finally. "We'll figure something out." She nodded, tears welling. "Thank you, Claire. You're a good woman. Better than I was." Then she turned and walked away slowly, the hem of her coat brushing wet leaves on the driveway. I stood there long after she disappeared, clutching the dish towel like it was an anchor. Inside, Ethan's laughter floated from the living room. He was watching something funny with Daniel. The sound pierced my chest. That was the night I stopped feeling safe. Later, when I told Daniel about the visit, he went pale. "She came here?" His jaw tightened. "What did she say?" I repeated her words. He rubbed his temples, pacing. "She can't just after all these years. She's trying to mess with us, Claire. That's what she does." I'd never seen him so agitated. "Is she really sick?" I asked quietly. He looked at me for a long moment. "I don't know. Maybe." But she's not taking Ethan from us. Not after everything. The way he said everything made me wonder what was hidden in that word. That night, I lay awake listening to Daniel breathe beside me, the house humming with silence. Somewhere deep down, a small voice whispered, "He's not telling you everything." But I ignored it. I told myself this was just a ghost from his past, nothing more. I was wrong. A week later, Ethan came home from school, quieter than usual. He skipped dinner, went straight to his room. When I knocked, he said he was fine, but his eyes looked clouded. The next day, I found a folded note in his jacket pocket. It wasn't from a friend. It was written in shaky handwriting I recognized all too well. "Meet me at the park. I need to see you, Mom." When I read that note, my knees nearly gave out. The paper trembled in my hands, the words blurring as tears welled in my eyes. I read it over and over again, hoping maybe I was mistaken that it was some cruel prank. But no. The handwriting was the same as on the envelope Melissa had handed me days earlier. She had found him. I walked straight to Daniel's study, heart pounding. He was hunched over his laptop, paperwork scattered everywhere. "She's contacted him," I said. My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Melissa, she wrote him a note." He froze. "What?" I handed him the folded piece of paper. He read it, jaw tightening as he exhaled a low, furious sigh. "How did she even—" He stopped, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'll handle it." "Handle it?" "Daniel, she's his mother." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Not anger, not surprise, fear. "She's manipulative," he said finally, voice low. "If you let her in, she'll tear this family apart." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something in my gut told me this wasn't just about Melissa showing up. It was about a secret that had been buried long before I entered the picture. The next afternoon, I drove to Ethan's school early. He didn't expect me to pick him up, but I needed to see him, to make sure he was okay. He slid into the passenger seat, pulling off his backpack with that teenage half-sigh. "Hey, Mom." His tone was casual, but I could see it in his eyes, a flicker of guilt, confusion, something heavy sitting behind them. "How was school?" I asked softly. "Fine." I wanted to say it then. "I know you met her," but I didn't. Not yet. I wanted him to tell me first. When we got home, he went straight to his room. Later that night, I stood by his door and heard a low murmur, his voice, hushed but emotional. I leaned in. "I just wanted to see you again," he was whispering. "Dad says you left us, but I don't care. You're still my mom." My heart shattered. I pushed the door open before I could stop myself. He spun around, his phone in hand, guilt painted all over his face. "Ethan," I said softly, trying to steady my voice. "Who were you talking to?" He hesitated. "Just a friend. Don't lie to me." Tears pooled in his eyes. "She's dying, Mom. She said she just wants to talk. Why can't I?" Hearing him call her Mom felt like being punched in the chest. I sat on his bed, my hands trembling. "Because things aren't that simple, sweetheart. She hurt your father. She hurt you." His voice broke. "You weren't there, were you? You don't know what happened." It was like something inside him cracked open, all those years of curiosity and buried loyalty flooding out. He turned away from me, and for the first time in his life, I felt a wall between us I couldn't cross. That night, Daniel and I fought. "I told you to keep her away," he said, pacing the kitchen. "Now she's got her claws in him." "She's dying, Daniel," I shot back. "You can't just erase her existence. He deserves to know where he comes from." He slammed his hand on the counter. "You don't understand what she's capable of." "Then tell me," I yelled. "Tell me what you're not saying." He went silent, his face drained of color. For a moment, I thought he might finally tell me the truth, but instead he whispered, "It's better if you don't know." Then he walked out. The front door closed behind him, leaving me in the kitchen with the sound of the ticking clock echoing against the tile. I sank to the floor, tears stinging my eyes. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence is rarely protection. It's usually guilt wearing a disguise. The next morning, Ethan was gone before sunrise. His bed was made, his phone charger missing. Panic clawed at my throat. I called Daniel, no answer. I called Ethan's friends, none had seen him. Then I remembered the park. I drove there so fast I barely remember the road. The morning fog still clung to the grass, and in the distance, near the swing set, I saw them. Melissa sat on the bench, wrapped in a gray scarf. Ethan sat beside her, shoulders hunched, listening. For a long moment, I just watched. She reached out, brushing his hair back, and he leaned into her touch. It was a sight both beautiful and unbearable. When I finally stepped forward, Melissa looked up. "Claire," she said quietly, "I was hoping you'd come." Ethan's head whipped around, guilt flashing across his face. "Mom, please," he started, but I cut him off. "No, Ethan, you need to go wait by the car." He hesitated, glancing between us, then slowly obeyed. When he was gone, I turned to her. "You had no right," I said. Tears glistened in her eyes. "He's my son. He's my son," I said, my voice shaking. "I raised him. I held him when he cried, stayed up all night when he was sick, taught him how to ride a bike. You left." She nodded, lips trembling. "You're right. I left because Daniel made me." The world seemed to tilt. "What are you talking about?" Her expression hardened. "He told me if I didn't disappear, he'd tell everyone the truth about Ethan's birth, about who his father really is." My breath caught. "What?" Melissa's eyes locked on mine. "Ethan isn't Daniel's son. He's yours." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. What?" I whispered. She nodded slowly. "You and I both fell for the same man once, and Daniel isn't the one who got me pregnant." The ground beneath me seemed to vanish. "What are you saying, Melissa?" I breathed. "I'm saying you've been raising your own son and you didn't even know it." For a moment, the world stopped moving. The sound of the wind through the trees, the distant hum of traffic, it all went silent. I just stood there, staring at Melissa as her words echoed inside me like thunder. "My son," I whispered. That's impossible." She shook her head slowly. "No, Claire. You remember James, don't you?" The name hit me like ice water. James was Daniel's brother, the one who vanished years ago after a falling out no one in the family ever talked about. I'm saying James was the one I was with. Daniel found out. He was furious. Said James betrayed him, said I ruined everything. When I got pregnant, Daniel made me disappear. He took Ethan, said he'd raise him as his own and make sure no one ever knew the truth. My hands trembled so violently I had to grip the bench to stay upright. "This doesn't make sense," I said weakly. Why would he raise James's child as his own?" Her eyes softened. "Because Daniel couldn't have children. He found out right before everything happened. I think raising Ethan was his way of keeping control, of pretending he wasn't broken." My throat went dry. All those years, the way Daniel guarded Ethan, his fierce protectiveness, his silence whenever I asked about Melissa, it all began to make a horrifying kind of sense. I swallowed hard. "If what you're saying is true, why tell me now?" "Because I'm dying," she said simply. "And he deserves to know who he really is. You both do." Before I could respond, Ethan's voice rang out from behind us. "Mom? What's going on?" He was standing a few feet away, his face pale, eyes wide. He must have heard everything. "Ethan," I started, but he backed away. You're saying she's not lying?" he said, voice cracking. "Dad's not my real dad? And you..." He looked at me, betrayal twisting his expression. "You knew?" I shook my head frantically. "No, Ethan, I swear I didn't. I just found out." He turned and ran. I drove home in a blur, heart pounding, tears streaming down my face. When I burst through the front door, Daniel was there, waiting. He must have known. "Where is he?" I demanded. "Where's Ethan?" Daniel stood still, his face unreadable. "He's safe." "Safe?" I screamed. "He just found out everything. You lied to him, to me, to everyone." Daniel's jaw tightened. "He wasn't supposed to find out like this. So it's true then?" I said, voice trembling. "He's not your son." He looked at me, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw a flicker of shame. "No," he said quietly. "He's not." I staggered back, the air leaving my lungs. "How could you?" I whispered. "You let me raise him, love him, believe he was yours." "I did what I had to," he said. "After James left, Melissa was spiraling. The baby needed someone stable. And you..." He hesitated. "You were strong. I knew you could give him the life he deserved. But you lied to me. I didn't deny it. I couldn't lose him," he said finally. "He's the only family I have left." I stared at him, my mind spinning with rage and grief and disbelief. "You stole him, Daniel. You stole everything." He reached out to me, desperate. "Please. You can't tell him. It'll destroy him." I stepped back. "It's not your choice anymore." That night, Ethan didn't come home. The police said they'd keep an eye out, that teens sometimes just needed space, but I knew this was different. He wasn't running away from home. He was running from the truth. I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. Every passing car light made my heart skip. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "He's with me. Don't come looking." I froze. The message came with a live location, a warehouse on the edge of town. "Melissa." Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and drove. When I arrived, the building looked abandoned, half the windows boarded up, the parking lot empty except for one old sedan. I pushed the door open and called out, "Melissa?" A faint voice echoed from inside. "Back here." I followed the sound to a small office at the back. Melissa was sitting in a chair, coughing weakly. Ethan stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes red. "Ethan, please," I said softly. "Come home." He shook his head. "You lied to me." "I didn't know," I said, tears welling up again. "Everything I did because I love you." Melissa's voice was hoarse. "He deserves to hear it from you, Claire. The truth." I took a deep breath, then knelt in front of Ethan. "Ethan, when I met your dad, Daniel, he told me your mother left. I believed him. I never asked too many questions because I thought I was protecting you. But I was wrong. You have a right to know the truth." He blinked rapidly, his voice trembling. "So, you're really—" "I don't know for sure," I said honestly. "But if there's even a chance, even 1 in a million, that you're my son, I'll take it. Because I've loved you as my own from the start." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then his lip quivered, and he stepped forward, throwing his arms around me. "I don't care who my real dad is," he sobbed. "You're my mom." I held him tight, the years of love and fear and confusion melting into tears that soaked my shoulder. When I looked up, Melissa was smiling faintly, tears streaking her cheeks. "Take care of him," she whispered, "always." And then her body went still. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. Melissa was gone. Ethan sat in silence the whole ride home, his hand clutching mine. Later that night, he asked quietly, "Are we going to tell Dad?" I looked at him and said, "He's not your dad anymore, Ethan. We'll figure out the rest together." He nodded, eyes heavy with exhaustion. And as he drifted off to sleep, I stood by the window, staring out into the dark. Some truths destroy families. Others rebuild them piece by fragile piece. But either way, once they surface, there's no going back. 6 months later, the house was quieter than I'd ever known it. After Melissa's funeral, Daniel moved out. There wasn't much of a fight about it, just a silent understanding that our marriage had become something we couldn't fix. The lies between us had rotted whatever love remained. Ethan stayed with me. I wasn't sure he would at first. After all, the ground beneath his life had cracked open. But he didn't want to leave. He said, "You're the only person who never gave up on me." And so, we tried to build something new out of the ruins. Mornings were simple cereal, half-hearted jokes, the smell of coffee brewing as sunlight touched the kitchen table. There was still tension, of course. Sometimes I caught him staring into space, lost in thoughts I couldn't reach. But he was healing, slowly. We both were. Then, one gray afternoon, an envelope arrived. It was plain, no return address, no markings except for my name scrawled across the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The DNA results. I'd sent the test weeks ago, at Ethan's request. He needed closure to know, once and for all, who he truly was. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter. Probability of maternity, 0%. My stomach dropped. He wasn't my biological son. The air felt thick, like I couldn't breathe. I sank into the chair, staring at the paper that shattered the last piece of my quiet hope. It didn't matter how much I had loved him, not in blood, not in body, not in birth. I wasn't his mother. And yet, how could that change anything? He was my boy. The one whose fever I stayed up through the night for, whose laughter echoed through every corner of my home, whose first heartbreak I held him through. Still, when Ethan came home that evening, the truth sat heavy between us. He dropped his backpack, noticing my pale face. "Mom, what's wrong?" I handed him the paper silently. He read it once, twice, then set it down carefully. "So she was right," he murmured. "About everything." "Yes," I said softly. "She was." He nodded slowly, then looked at me. Really looked at me. "Does this change anything for you?" My voice broke when I said, "No, not a single thing." And then, something unexpected happened. He smiled, small, tired, but genuine. "Good," he said, "because it doesn't for me either." The next few weeks were a strange mix of peace and uncertainty. Daniel hadn't reached out since he left, though part of me expected him to. The other part dreaded it. But one rainy evening in March, he appeared at the front door thinner, older somehow, like the truth had taken a toll on him too. Ethan was upstairs studying. I opened the door cautiously. "Daniel," I said flatly. He nodded. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. He stood in the living room, his eyes scanning the familiar furniture, the framed photos on the wall, all the moments that now belonged to someone else's life. I heard about Melissa, he said quietly. I'm sorry. You should be, I replied. You let her die with that secret while you lived a lie. He flinched, then looked down. I know. I thought I was protecting him. By stealing his identity? I snapped. He didn't answer right away. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, I didn't want him to grow up knowing the truth about me. The truth about you? I repeated. It took a deep breath. I was the one who pushed James away. I told him if he didn't leave town, I'd ruin him. He was reckless, yes, but he loved her. And I couldn't stand it. I wanted what he had, a family. A child. I thought if I took Ethan in, I could start over. Be better. His eyes glistened. But I was never better, was I? For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain beat softly against the windows, a steady, sad rhythm. Finally, I said, he deserves to hear it from you. All of it. Daniel nodded. I know. That's why I'm here. When Ethan came downstairs, the tension was thick enough to cut. Dad? He said cautiously. Daniel swallowed hard. Ethan, I owe you the truth. I wasn't honest with you or with Claire. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't. I stole your story. Ethan's voice was calm, but his eyes burned. You let me grow up thinking my mom didn't want me. I know, Daniel said. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Then why come back now? Ethan asked. Daniel hesitated. Because I need to make it right before I can live with myself. Ethan's jaw tightened. You can't make it right. But maybe you can stop making it worse. Daniel nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. You're right. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you. I love you. Always have. Even if I didn't deserve to. Ethan looked at him for a long time, then turned and walked upstairs. Daniel wiped his eyes and looked at me. He's grown strong, he said softly. You did that. I folded my arms, my heart heavy. He did that himself. He nodded, gave one last look at the house, then left the door clicking shut behind him like a final goodbye. A week later, Ethan and I took a trip to the lake, the same one where Melissa had first told me the truth. The water shimmered under the soft light, peaceful now, as if the storm had passed. Ethan tossed a pebble into the water and said quietly, Mom? Yes, sweetheart. I've been thinking, maybe I want to find Uncle James someday, if he's still alive. I smiled faintly. I think he'd want that. Ethan nodded, eyes glistening. But not yet. Not until I'm ready. That's fair, I said. Take your time. The truth will still be there when you are. He leaned his head on my shoulder. Thanks for not giving up on me. I wrapped my arm around him and whispered, Never have, never will. And as we sat there, mother and son, bound not by blood but by something stronger, I realized that love isn't proven by DNA. It's proven by who stays. A year passed. Ethan graduated high school that spring, wearing a deep blue gown that made his shoulders look broader, older. I stood in the audience clutching the edge of my seat, my heart bursting with pride. When they called his name, he walked across the stage, tall, composed, smiling in that quiet way that was all his own. For a moment, I forgot every tear, every sleepless night, every time I'd questioned whether I had the right to call myself his mother. Because in that moment I was. Completely. Without doubt. After the ceremony, as people flooded the courtyard, Ethan found me. He hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. You made it, I whispered. He laughed. You didn't think I'd skip my own graduation, did you? I meant, I said, touching his cheek. You made it through all of it. His expression softened. We both did. That summer, something inside me changed. For so long, my life had revolved around guilt for the lie I'd lived, for the marriage I couldn't save, for the truth I'd hidden. But slowly, the guilt began to fade, replaced by something gentler. Acceptance. I started teaching again at the community center, small art classes for women who'd put their dreams aside for family, work, survival. Every time I held a brush, I thought of Melissa, of the painting she once sent Ethan when he was small. 2 figures holding hands in a field, faceless but full of light. She'd titled it, The Ones Who Stayed. That painting now hung in our hallway, framed between photos of Ethan's milestones. Sometimes I caught him staring at it, not with sadness, but with a kind of peace. He was moving forward, too. In July, we received a letter. It was from Daniel. He'd entered counseling and wanted to meet Ethan before leaving the country for work. I was hesitant, but Ethan surprised me. I think I should go, he said. Not to forgive him, not yet, but to say goodbye. So, they met one afternoon at a quiet cafe near the old courthouse. I didn't go inside, but I waited in the car across the street, watching from a distance like a ghost from a different life. They talked for nearly an hour. I saw Daniel cry twice, and at one point, Ethan reached across the table and placed his hand over his father's. When Ethan returned, I asked, "How did it go?" He looked thoughtful. He said he's proud of me, and that he wishes he'd done better. "Do you believe him?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I think so. But I also told him that being proud of me doesn't erase what he did." I smiled faintly. "That sounds fair." "Yeah," Ethan said. Then he added, "He said you saved us both." I blinked back tears. That's kind of him to say, but I think we saved ourselves. By autumn, Ethan had moved into a small apartment near the university. The night before he left, we sat together on the porch, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. "Mom," he said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." He hesitated. "If you could go back and tell your younger self something before you married Dad, what would you say?" The question lingered between us, like fog. I thought for a long moment, then said quietly, "I'd tell her to love without fear, but to never lose herself in the process." He nodded slowly. "That's good advice." I smiled. "What about you?" He chuckled. "I'd tell little me to stop worrying about who he comes from. The people who show up, they're the ones who matter." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "That's wisdom I didn't have at your age." He smiled. "You taught it to me." When he drove off the next morning, the house felt impossibly empty again. But this time, the silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the street, and whispered, "Go live your life, my boy." Later that afternoon, I packed away old photos, the remnants of a life that had ended long before I'd admitted it. Among them, I found a folded note yellowed and soft from years of hiding. It was in Melissa's handwriting. I'd never seen it before. It read, "Claire, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say it in person. Thank you. For loving him. For giving him what I couldn't. Whatever happens, please don't let him forget that he's loved twice over by me for giving him life, and by you for giving him a home. And if you ever feel like you've failed, remember this. Mothers aren't measured by blood. They're measured by who stays when it's hardest to stay. With love, Melissa." I held that note against my chest and cried, not from sadness this time, but from something close to grace. She had seen me, even in my imperfection. She'd trusted me with her son, and in the end, we'd both done our part to love him into the man he'd become. Years later, when Ethan got married, he asked me to stand beside him as his mom on the wedding certificate. I remember looking at that form, the little blank box next to Mother's name, and my hand trembling as I wrote mine in ink. After the ceremony, he whispered, "You'll always be my first call, Mom." And I believed him. Life doesn't always give us the families we expect. Sometimes it hands us broken pieces, a child not born from us, a marriage that ends, a truth that hurts and asks, "What will you build with this?" I built love. Imperfect, messy, but real. When people say blood is thicker than water, I smile now. Because I know something they don't, that love, chosen love, is thicker than anything. So if you've ever loved someone who wasn't yours, remember, you are enough. You matter. And the ones who stay, they're the real family. Would you have done what I did? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine.